appreciate everyone being here. I'm really grateful to have my very good friend, Congressman Mike Kelly, with us here today. Mike represents a district in the western part of the state, from Butler up to Erie, roughly. What's your district number?
16.
The 16th district. This is the 11th district we're in here. But Congressman Kelly is the chair of the tax subcommittee on the Ways and Means Committee, on which we both serve. We both serve on the Ways and Means Committee. And I think most of you understand or know that the Ways and Means Committee is the committee in Congress that deals with all of the tax policy, among other areas of jurisdiction. And of course, next year, it's going to be a big year for tax policy. We'll be seeing the expiration of many provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which will affect probably all of your businesses, will affect almost every business in the country that's a pass-through organization, affect individuals as well. So the point is, there's going to be a lot of discussion about tax policy. The chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Smith, has put together tax teams, groups of members who are basically taking the policy discussions out on the road like this. We want to be out hearing from businesses, hearing your thoughts, hearing the impact of tax policy on your business. I've been given the opportunity to chair the small business, specifically the 199A provisions in the tax code that I'm sure we'll be hearing from many of you about. And again, we talk a lot about the C Corps, which is important, that we get the tax policy right there as well. But this particular provision in the code was put in place to ensure that pass-through, the S Corps and partnerships, sole proprietors, individual operators can compete, that their tax structure is at least somewhat on par with the Cs. And so we also know that small businesses, Main Street companies, that we call Main Street companies, create most of the jobs in the country. About 80% of the jobs in the country are created by small businesses. And those businesses grow to be large businesses and create more jobs. And so it's really, really important to each one of us in particular that we get this tax policy right when we do this next year. So we're spending a lot of time in the Ways and Means Committee to prepare, to talk about what it is, how this should look, what's going to be most productive, how we can get this economy growing at a faster pace. Tax policy is really important for that. And so that's where this discussion is really, really important. So grateful to each one of you for participating today. We look forward to hearing from each of you. I have written notes that I completely blew here, but let's see what I missed. I think we'll just go to, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then I'll turn it over to each of you to provide. We're going to go about 4 minutes each, just to try to keep this on time. And I don't know, is someone going to be timing it? Normally, I don't know how we're going to do that. Maybe just give a little bit of a warning or something. Normally we have a clock. If we're in the Capitol, you have a clock and you can see, but we'll try to wave you down one way or another. But we have Eric Paulus, President and CEO of Crescent, and we thank you for hosting this at your wonderful facility here today. Bill Riff, did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Owner and team leader of 3 Sports Clips locations in the district. Mike Signer from Hauk Group. It's a regional industrial and commercial roofing contractor. Eric Wenger, a partner and CPA in the tax services group at RKL Accounting in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Luke Austin, financial advisor at Edward Jones in Hanover. Wendy Bittner, CEO at Loshaw Thermal Technology in Spring Grove, PA. And Marcy Bittner, who's the treasurer at Loshaw. John Toy, owner of Fast Signs in York and Lancaster County, and Steve Harnish, owner of Central Manor Dairy in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so I think with that, unless you have any comments, we'll go
No, that's fine.
Go to witnesses, and then we'll have time for questions after that. So why don't we'll start. Eric, do you want to give Mr. Paulus 4 minutes?
Thank you very much. Sure thing. Right. Thank you, Congressman. Afternoon and welcome to Crescent Industries, to the committee and to fellow attendees. Appreciate you being here. My name is Eric Paulus. I'm President and CEO of Crescent Industries. We are a family and ESOP-owned plastics manufacturing company. We do injection molding, and we've been operating here in New Freedom Borough for over 75 years. We primarily serve the medical and defense industries from this location, and I certainly thank the committee for the opportunity to offer some testimony regarding the Section 199, or QBI as we typically call it. Over the past 6 years, the QBI has saved our company in excess of $380,000 in federal taxes. And for a small company like ours, that amount makes a huge difference. I just want to share 3 ways that these savings have impacted our company and our community. In terms of economic development, Section 199A has enabled us to reinvest in our operations, specifically in new equipment and facilities, such as the one that we're sitting in right now. We just opened this one in June. This building was largely abandoned. It was a veneer factory dating back to the 50s and 60s, and we were able to redevelop it and give it new life as a modern clean room manufacturing facility. In case you missed it, if you look through the window in the lobby downstairs, you can see some of the activity going on in there. $380,000 buys 1 or 2 of the injection molding machines that you'll see through that window, our primary processing equipment. And additionally, our investment in the building in 2017 now provides affordable tenant space for 6 other local businesses. The reinvestments that we made were aimed at long-term growth for our employee owners, and I believe it's a prime example of how the QBI helps fuel economic development in communities. From the perspective of job creation and retention, as you're aware, and Congressman mentioned, small businesses are the driver of job creation. We're told that well over 60 to 80% of the jobs in the U.S. employs over half of the country's private workforce as well. And those present here no doubt understand the critical role that plays in sustaining and growing our economy. For our part, we employ about 150 full-time employees here. And we also offer and train a state-approved apprenticeship program for precision metalworking machinists. We're currently training 3 apprentice mold makers in partnership with the Manufacturers Association in York. In 75 years of business, we have never once laid off a tool maker, which I believe is a testimony to our commitment to the trades and the importance of it. During the global pandemic, we kept our doors open and employees working to produce critical medical devices and respirators for EMS. And thanks in part to the QBI, we were able to raise our starting wages in 2022 to that all-important $15 an hour number. I feel like I should mention that we did this to match the local labor market, not because it was trendy. $380,000 pays a $60,000 salary for 6 years. And as such, the tax savings from Section 199A are not corporate welfare. It specifically benefits pass-through entities like ours and my cohorts here today, and helps to create and sustain the jobs and train tomorrow's workforce. Thirdly, as far as community support, businesses like ours and those here today have deep roots in their communities. We sponsor local events, contribute to charitable causes, and support our tax base. And in a typical year, Crescent will pay about $40,000 in local taxes and about the same contribution to local charities, while adding $10 million in payroll to the local economy. So $380,000 allows us to give generously to support our local community services. And in that way, it's financial relief in Section 199A that finds its way beyond just the corporate walls and into the constituents' communities. Conclusion, the QBI is a critical component of our tax code, and it supports the vitality of small pass-through businesses like ours, both here in Pennsylvania and really across the nation. In combination with the tax benefits of employee stock ownership plans and the R&D tax credit, is a shameless plug for both of those, by the way. The QBI is one of the 3 pillars of our tax strategy. It provides significant tax relief, enables businesses like ours to thrive and grow, sustain jobs, and contribute to our community. I certainly urge the committee to continue to support and protect Section 199A and to ensure that small businesses like ours and those in this room can continue to provide economic opportunity, good and secure jobs, and community support for their constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
We'll go to Mr. Riff, 4 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so thank you, Congressman Smucker, for inviting me to speak today, focusing on the needs of the small business and the beauty industry as a Main Street tax team examines the expiring provisions in the Tax Cuts and Job Acts TCIA of 2017. I also want to thank you for introducing the Main Street Tax Certainty Act. My name is Bill Riff, and I own 3 Sport Clips store locations within Lancaster. I have 32 employees at this present time, and they're just amazing ladies and gentlemen that work for me. They both have all went to school in the area, grown up in the area, and I'm a proud owner to be able to support them and their voice here today. If Section 199A were to expire at the end of the year, it would greatly impact my business and employees. The small business deductions allows me to offer valuable benefits to my employees, including health insurance, which I pay 50% of for them. I also offer a 401k that I match for them as well. Providing these benefits, I ensure that my small business insurance industry employees have access to the same opportunities as those working for larger corporations. Maintaining these benefits is crucial for staying in business and serving communities where residents need reliable places for haircuts. As a relatively new small operation, keeping my tax planning straightforward is crucial. The 199A deduction has simplified this process while reducing my business's taxable income. Additionally, I must highlight an important issue affecting small businesses in my industry specifically. For decades, the salon industry has been excluded from the 45B FICA tax credit, which has already cost my business thousands of dollars in the short time as a small business owner. I urge you also to consider extending access to this credit to small beauty and barber establishments within the Lancaster County. While the restaurant industry can receive credit for the FICA taxes paid on employees for tip income, the salon industry cannot. Despite not paying out receiving the tips or having any control over the tipping process, I still incur a 7.65 tax on every dollar my employees and I report to the IRS. This reporting is beneficial as it helps my employees, 4 to be exact since I bought the business just recently. 4 employees qualify for mortgages and later have the ability to receive Social Security and Medicare benefits. However, without access to existing 45B credit places a financial burden on my business, limiting my ability to expand, hire more staff, and invest in new technologies. Access to both 199A pass-through deduction and the 45B FICA tip tax credit will be instrumental in ensuring the continued success of my business and the salon industry. It would also support employment of business ownership opportunities for many women and minorities across America. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Sigmund.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and represent the Houck organization and family. My name is Mike Signor. I'm a CPA and partner with Baker Tilly and have worked with the Houck companies and family for over 30 years. Houck is a specialty contractor headquartered in Lingelstown, Pennsylvania, with offices in PA and Maryland. They have a diverse portfolio of services, including roofing, roof repairs, concrete, and masonry restoration. Houck is currently in its 3rd generation of family ownership. The company was founded in 1947 by Lawrence Houck as a small masonry contractor. Having worked with his father for several years, his son Gary acquired ownership in the 1980s, and under his leadership, the portfolio of service offerings expanded to other areas of construction, including caulking and flooring. With Gary's daughter, Kara, Houck's now enjoying the 3rd generation of family ownership. Since 2017, the Houck companies have experienced significant growth in people, growth in services, and growth in customer projects. Over the last 5 years, Houck has experienced top-line revenue growth of 18%, They've invested over $5 million in property, plant, and equipment over that same time period. Their employee count has gone from 120 in 2016 to 450 currently. In part, that's been fueled by 5 acquisitions completed during that time period that brought new team members and new services to the Houck organization. Nothing is more important to the Houck family than the health and well-being of the Houck team members and their families. A newly adopted core value of the Houck organization is employee health, mental health, physical health, and financial health. Houck continually invests in safety and training programs and looks to offer quality health care and financial programs to support their team members and their families. They're committed to the communities where their customers and employees reside. The Houck organization contributed time and materials to the Tiny Homes Initiative for veterans in Harrisburg. Employees also donate their time to such organizations as the Central PA Food Bank or gathering a crew to do a roof repair for a retired employee. Houck is organized as a subchapter S corporation for tax purposes. Accordingly, the company, through its owners, has benefited significantly from the 199A provisions of the 2017 tax bill. Houck has been able to utilize the tax savings from this provision to support growth, equipment, company acquisitions, and to care for team members, health care, profit sharing, retirement. The QBI deduction effectively reduces the marginal federal tax rate by 20%. For example, a business owner with a marginal tax rate of 35% would be paying 28% on QBI income. In Pennsylvania, this provision helped to preserve the attractiveness of pass-through entities relative to C corporations. The 2017 Tax Act reduced the federal tax rate for C corporations to 21%. However, the personal tax rate in Pennsylvania is approximately 3% compared to the corporate tax rate of 9%. So the 199A provision helped maintain the attractiveness of pass-through entities in Pennsylvania. I would also offer that Houck has benefited from the bonus depreciation provisions in the 2017 Tax Act. Although it's temporary versus the permanent savings in the 199A provision, bonus depreciation has allowed Houck to amplify its investments in capital assets. I can confidently state that these tax provisions have allowed Houck to increase its investments in people and resources since 2017. Preserving the 199A provision would provide continued support for Houck's growth and investment in its people, its customers, and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winger, 4 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with everybody today. My name is Eric Wenger. I serve as the managing partner of RKL's Lancaster office. RKL is a CPA and advisory firm, 7 offices throughout Pennsylvania, about 700 employees. I've spent my career practicing in the tax area, mostly advising closely held businesses, S-corps, partnerships, and their business owners. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my perspective. I've certainly interfaced with a lot of clients who have directly benefited from 199A. When I go back in time and think about when the TCJA was enacted, I remember that first tax season as we were running projections and then ultimately delivering tax returns and showing clients how dramatically that reduced their tax bill, and the infusion that was for their businesses was remarkable. What that resulted in, not only was those year's taxes reduced, their quarterly estimates going forward have been reduced. Everybody's sort of gotten into this pattern now where they're used to that level of taxation. I am very fearful of what an inverse of that would look like. In other words, if TCJA just sort of went out the window, got repealed, was not extended in some fashion, particularly 199A, I think those business owners would be in for a real shock. One thing that I've noticed is cash is king. You hear that all the time, but that is so common with business owners. Not because they're taking the cash out of the business and putting it in their pocket, because the reality is most business owner clients, a vast majority of their net worth is tied up in that business. They're not taking the cash. They're leaving it in the business to go buy more equipment, make the expansion that we heard about earlier, hire more people, take on a new innovative project. There's so many different ways that capital can be deployed to stimulate the economy. And that's the reality of what happens when taxes are lower. It's not a case of, let me take that money and go buy another house. That's really not what I observed whatsoever. And so I think the opportunity here to continue to extend that would certainly be beneficial in terms of the overall economic stimulus. Um, the representative alluded to this earlier, that the C Corp rates being permanently reduced to 21%, this was really a sort of a parallel match in order to keep pass-through somewhat on a level playing field. It'll be interesting as you guys are working through this to observe what happens if C Corp rates do or do not remain permanently 21%, and in turn, what happens to 199A. I could see many clients working with their advisors to say, well, no, wait a minute, if those dynamics change on either of those issues, whether it's C Corp rates, whether it's 199A, there may be new strategies employed about what choice of entity actually makes sense. And here in Pennsylvania, as the CNI, corporate net income tax rate, is reduced, it does make that argument a little bit stronger towards C corporations. My hope is that the C Corp rates would stay or even be reduced, as has been talked about on certain sides. Certainly that 199A would be extended and ideally made permanent. The last point I would make here, from a planning standpoint, from an advisory standpoint with clients, it's incredibly hard to advise on the tax side when there's uncertainty, when there's sunsetting, when there's provisions that may or may not get extended, when there's things that are done retroactively. I think back to a number of years ago, bonus depreciation being extended retroactively to me makes no sense. At that point, people bought what they were going to buy. But just that ability to plan ahead, look ahead, is critical. And so any clarity that can be brought in any of these provisions, I'll throw 174 in there, the R&D piece that's now apparently sitting back in the Senate. That issue is near and dear to so many manufacturing clients. So I just say thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Thank you for the work that each of you gentlemen are doing on this piece. It is extremely valuable to our clients and hopeful to see good progress on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Austin.
Are we going across?
Mr. Harnish? Yeah.
Today, to serve on the Land O'Lakes Corporate Board. I'm going to start out by thanking Representative Smucker and the staff for coordinating the event, as well as his continued leadership supporting our nation's dairy producers. In that vein, I appreciate the opportunity to speak in behalf of 199A for the sake of rural dairy producers, rural communities, and the broader agricultural sector. Local businesses are the lifeblood of all communities, but in rural America, agriculture is often the economic engine that keeps those communities running. Agricultural cooperatives are vital. They help farmers pool resources, share risks, work together in buying supplies, in processing and marketing so we can stay competitive. Cooperative members are the owners, the investors, and the shareholders of our businesses. One of my friends from the Midwest likes to give this example. Land O'Lakes has a manufacturing asset in the city of St. Louis that provides good paying jobs for people in that community. But when we pay dividends at the end of the year, we mail out checks to the member owners in every rural county all across the state. That money ends up at the tractor dealership, the local grocery store, the offering basket, in every county, every community. I'm here today because I'm concerned about how tax policy going forward is going to affect my farm and my cooperative. The corporate rate reduction in 2017 coincided with the extension of 199A. This meant that cooperative members and other small businesses received similar tax deductions to those larger corporations. Those benefits were significant considering the headwinds that farmers have faced since 2017. Global pandemic, geopolitical conflict, supply constraints, high inflations, and market volatility. Right now, we've got a localized drought in southern Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia. My estimate is that we get about 2/3 of the normal corn crop this growing season. For my 200 cow herd, the deduction adds up to roughly $75,000 a year. Every farm is different size. The equivalent is about 100 cows for a single family farm, 2 full-time employees. Do your math for what that means as farms are larger or smaller than that. But my approach has been to take a set salary from the farm and then years when there's a profit, reinvest it in the farm. That might be upgrading machinery, modernizing facilities, or exploring expansion opportunities. Dairy farming tends to be a low margin business that requires significant long-term investments. Financial relief provided by Section 199A is invaluable, helps us navigate fluctuating milk prices and input prices, and provides some economic certainty. The benefits of 199A are tangible for me, but they extend beyond our individual farms. They're meaningful for our rural communities, they support local economies, and they provide stability for our nation's food supply. Provision ensures that the agriculture sector remains competitive and sustainable, allowing farmers to continue feeding our nation and the world. As we approach the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and with it, Section 199A, I urge members of Congress to support the extension, and ideally make it permanent going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Toy.
Representative Smucker, Representative Kelly, thank you so much for putting this on and being here today, and appreciate the fact that both of you have been in small business, so you understand what we go through on a regular basis. I'm in a partnership with two other gentlemen, and we own 3 businesses, 2 of which are franchises. So I do also appreciate your support of the franchise business model as it came under attack last year, so appreciate you helping to maintain that. We came together to form a partnership, and we operate 2 of the largest fast signs in the country now, which has just happened over the past 3 years. We've grown tremendously through 2 very good customers of ours that we've had. As a result of that, we now have a location in Washington, just north of Seattle, and then right here in Lancaster County. As a combination of the 2, we employ about 193 people, both in those 2 locations and throughout the country as sales reps. And we've continued to invest in bringing on good people to be a part of our team. And so what this has meant to our business, for the 3 of us through the past 3 years we've partnered together, is that we've been able to continue to have that money available to reinvest. We've hired over 120 people in the last 2.5 years, 65 of which have been right here in Lancaster, to continue to support them. Our average starting wage is much higher than most others in the industry, and as a result, even at the higher wages, we're still having trouble finding people because we currently have over 15 openings that are trying to fill between the 2 locations. And so it's been a tremendous blessing for us to have that additional capital, because we've also experienced over 25% growth year over year, tracking more than 35 this year. So with that growth, obviously capital is very constrained. And so every dollar that we're able to maintain and not have to take out as cash distributions to help pay our tax liabilities goes right back into the company. We continue to maintain that as we've hired additional employees. I'll echo some of the comments regarding the bonus depreciation. That's big for us. We've invested about $4 million over the past 3 years in plant upgrades, as well as purchasing equipment. Just this year alone, we spent $2.5 million on 2 printers and 2 very large cutters that we were installing at both locations. As a result of that, that helps us to keep up with the volume, continue to grow, and support the people that we already have on staff working through there. And so for us, it's just been an opportunity to continue to invest. One of our motto, our mission statement is to improve life together. And that means our customers, that means our vendors, that means our employees, but we're really working hard on building that culture and reinvesting in them. So we offer great benefits, we offer a wonderful place to work, and we feel that our culture has been our strength. It's allowed us to keep that growth, keep our top customers going through there. So appreciate your efforts to maintain this and do that through the act that you've introduced. I'm happy to help in any way that we can to continue to press that as we invest in our team. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bittner. Yeah, this right there is good.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for having this, Congressman. I feel like everyone has already said everything that needed to be said about how good this bill is, and we should definitely support keeping this in place, because we're a pretty small business, and mostly what our guys use is a knife, and that's our equipment, is a knife. But the benefits we've gotten, pretty much we've been able to buy a new van because we really needed one. The old one was making me stinky. So
She did need one.
Together, so yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. I know that 20% doesn't sound like much, but it really does add up. Throughout the last few years, especially this year, we benefited a little bit more because we had a better year, luckily. And I'm just glad you guys are here doing what you do and backing us up, because we need your help all we can get.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Marcy Bittner, and Wendy and I own the business. It's 100% women-owned construction business. We install mechanical insulation on plumbing, piping, and duct and equipment. We have 3 employees, and we pay 100% of their insurance premiums, their health insurance.
Wow.
So that's what that means to us. We'd like to, thank you for inviting us here. It's a very important discussion. Small business owners are dedicated. They're innovative. They're resilient. We inspire and we foster ideas and plans for entrepreneurs. The $30,400 we receive from the small business deduction stays here. We shop local. We eat local. We fund our kids' extracurricular activities, and we donate to our community projects and events. But in real terms, ending this deduction means we can't support the local animal shelter, the food banks. We won't be going to the restaurant down the street that's going to fail in 3 months because we can't afford to eat there. It means we're going to have to say no when the neighborhood children come to us and they ask to buy something from their fundraiser. It means we won't be patronizing the brand new shop that just opened down the street. The 20% small business deduction impacts more than just owners. It impacts the entire communities we live in. For us, we sum it up like this. Taxes are like having 2 employees on the payroll that always get paid but never shows up to work.
Got some good lines going on. Yeah. Mr. Austin.
Congressman, thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. My name is Luke Austin, and just a little bit about who I am and what I do. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. I began my career in 2008 in the middle of the global financial crisis. Being a financial advisor is more than just investment selection and recommending the next hot stock or opportunity in the market. It's about building deep, meaningful relationships with my clients here in the community to truly understand what is most important to them on their financial journey. I provide tailored solutions to organize, grow, manage, and protect their wealth, and a lot of this money is being spent right here in our communities. I lead a practice in Hanover, Pennsylvania, where I serve approximately 430 households. My branch office administrator, Christy Eisenhart, and I value the opportunity to serve clients on Main Street in Hanover every single day. If you're not familiar with our firm, Edward Jones has approximately 19,000 financial advisors in 15,000 branch offices across North America. We have clients in every county in the United States but one, and we have brick and mortar offices in 428 of the 435 congressional districts. In Congressman Smucker's district, we have 34 offices serving about 10,000 clients in the 11th congressional district. So thank you for inviting me today. It's a privilege to have the opportunity to discuss Edward Jones and the 199A tax deduction. Edward Jones is a privately held partnership. The firm is 100% owned by our 33,000 current and former colleagues. Annually, the firm shares more than 50% of its operating revenue with associates. 99% of our income is ordinary. So again, thank you for allowing us to speak about this 199A deduction. Over the past several years, as it's been stated, business income deductions for individual taxpayers have been enacted at a federal level and several states. The qualified business income, the QBI deduction, was enacted in 2017 as part of the TCJA and is scheduled to sunset in 2025. So it also lowered the top corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% and the top individual rate from 39.6% to 37%, among other tax changes. QBI helps level the playing field for individuals like myself and many of the clients that I serve right here in the community. Today, at my income bracket, I benefit from the 20% deduction on qualified income. For me, this has a significant impact on my own taxes. Before joining here today, I reached out to my CPA. I knew that I benefited from this deduction, but not to the extent that he told me. So last year, I personally received a $34,000 deduction, resulting in an $8,200 in federal tax savings. If the deduction were to expire at the end of 2025, I would be concerned about the negative impact it has not only for me and my household and my small business, but also the households of many of my clients whom are small business owners. So I appreciate the members of the committee taking the time to hear from me and the other panelists here today about the impact of some of these tax elements to Main Street professionals like myself. So thank you again for taking the time to be here with us.
Thank you, and thanks to each of you. Some great stories. Appreciate you all taking your time.
I don't know why. My dad and my mother thought they had to get married before he left for the war because he was afraid he wasn't going to come back. I thought that was an odd idea. So, but my family has been the
beneficiary of people who came through the hardest times ever. I'm just telling you, everything that you've all said, we're all in the same business, right? We're all in exactly the same business. By the way, Harpsters, do you know the Harpsters stuff? Okay. When I hear you talk, I think, so how many of us were there for TCJA? We're down to about 5 members that were there for TCJA.
On Ways and Means.
Yeah, and it was the pushback on doing that at the time was that you were only benefiting the rich. And we have this constant battle in our legislature about the rich get taken care of and the poor don't. The only thing I would say is that the biggest problem I have is the lack of education in our country right now. People don't know how it works, and they go after sound bites and not facts. We have never seen greater revenue than with TCJA. And for us to continue, if we're going to continue to do that, I don't want to be political, but I want to be honest with you. If we're not in the majority, you're going to see an altogether different approach to how taxes should be handled. The idea that somehow by raising rates, you're going to increase revenues is that's exactly the opposite of what happens. When we encourage investment and we encourage people to put more into what they have to get more out of it, we've never had greater tax rates or greater tax revenues than we have right now. The biggest problem that he and I face is that people don't understand the economic model. They truly believe that people aren't paying their fair share. I can tell you, when we were doing TCJA, we were going through this whole idea of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I made one comment. I said, actually, there's 3 years out of the time I bought the dealership from my family that I didn't pay any taxes. And the members all looked at me and said, oh my God, how did you work that out? I said, we lost money that year because you only pay tax on profits. You don't pay tax on operating expenses. We still pay real estate taxes. We pay wage taxes. We pay. And the one thing I think we don't start understanding is if you don't feed the cow, she's not going to give milk. And that is a hard thing to get across to people. So the only thing I would encourage all of you, because you are really instrumental in the areas that you're in. Please don't be afraid to share with people what November means this year. I am astounded by people and say, well, it's 2 things we never talked about in my family. I said, what was that? Well, politics and religion. I said, that's the reason we are where we are today. We need to start talking louder, longer, and we need to start being able to be with you every day. You need to understand that. I don't mean that in a negative way. Not so much you, but if the people that we live with every day, the people that we work with every day for mutual goals and success are disconnected from why it is we do what we do, we lose. The country loses. And I have, my lifetime, I don't know I've ever seen our nation in greater peril than it is right now, and it is because of a lack of education and understanding of how this incredible operation self-government has been so successful. The envy of the world and also the target of the world. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. The 6th and the 21st are the most important days of the month for me, and people say, why is that? I said, payday. We've never, ever not made a payroll. Now, I haven't paid myself all the time, but we've never, ever not made payroll, and I think that's what it all comes down to. So when it comes to tax policy, if it's not pro-growth, and I mean pro-growth in revenues that we were able then to gather in tax revenue, raising tax rates, taking away some of these other incentives to do things that would actually add to tax revenue is what we have to keep our eye on. So first of all, thank you for all being here today. This guy. So we are, I think the advantage that we have is I think the greatest thing in life for me is almost going broke a couple of times. So, I mean, sleepless nights.
We've probably all done that.
Hey, I'll tell you what, if you're in Belleville, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So sleepless nights, and you're wringing your hands, and you're paying everybody but yourself, and you're saying, oh my God, I can't afford to lose this. My parents put their whole life into it. I go on and on too much with this stuff, but this is what it comes down to. The people who actually pay, the people who make revenue possible, as opposed to a group of people, it doesn't matter. You can be $34 trillion in debt and say you're doing a hell of a good job. That's not any business I know that's successful, but we rely on you talking with other people and people who come to you asking you, what can I do? And the answer is get educated, get registered, and get out to vote. And I know people say, oh, don't go politics. I am going politics because I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And I'm not going to sit back silently and watch 10 grandchildren scratch their head. And I said, I wonder why Grandpa didn't try to save me. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you being here and everything you do. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. Good stuff.
That's my tax
Good-
policy,
good
right?
Stuff. Good stuff. We were talking earlier about making payroll. You said you'd never missed payroll. And you all know I was a business owner as well for 25 years. And I remember the days when we tried to make payroll and I was stressing about whether we'd have enough money to cover it. And we're running around trying to get people to pay bills so that we could pay for payroll. So yeah, we just talked about that. But I think when we're talking about tax policy, there's an optimum level of tax. We need enough money. Everybody knows government has core functions that we need to provide. In the case of the federal government, it's a little different than the state government, but national security, a lot of different things that the federal government has to provide. So you need money to fund it. But if you raise tax too far, you don't end up having the strong economy. You're not going to reinvest back in your businesses if you raise taxes too far. And so I think what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was trying to reset our policy to incentivize stronger growth. And I think of this from maybe a 50,000 foot level. I worry about our federal debt, and I worry about the trajectory that we're on. And I know that the only way, multiple things we have to do to put ourselves on a better trajectory, but you can't do it without stronger economic growth than what we have right now. And so one of the, I think, successes of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was we saw that happen. We saw additional growth. CBO right now is projecting about 1.5% economic growth for as far as you can see, which is only about half of where we've been. We've had an average of about 3% growth. Now, if you think about the difference of 1.5% compounded over 30 years compared to 3%, it's a massive difference. And so it's the thing we have to do to really get our economy moving and be able to solve this debt at some point or another. After the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we saw someone I think mentioned research and development and then the bonus depreciation, some of you mentioned. Those were probably some of the key pieces which unfortunately have expired, and we passed that out of the House trying to fix that. We've been disappointed the Senate didn't take that up, but those are some of the key pieces to incentivize the kind of investment that to help you make that kind of investment that grew the economy. We ticked up the growth in the economy by about a percentage point after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, and you saw the additional revenue come in. Even at lower tax rates, we had higher revenue at all levels, corporate income, everything. Corporate may have been down slightly the first year, but then it came right back up as we saw corporations continue to grow. But that wasn't the only impact, and this is what you're all talking about as well. You're talking about the benefits to your employees when you can reinvest back into the company, the additional jobs that you're creating when you're reinvesting. We saw wages jump up after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act by about $5,000 per average household. Think about that. Very different, by the way, than our current policy, where it's costing about, the inflation right now after the policies of this administration is costing about $12,000 annually for the average American family. But we saw $5,000 to $6,000 increase in real wages that made a huge difference. We also saw the lowest poverty rate ever in the history of the country. Lowest poverty rate ever. More people working than ever after we did the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So we want to try to find a way to extend these policies and ensure that that kind of economic opportunity for all Americans is available. We want to enable you to be able to continue to invest. By the way, we visited 4 other businesses before we came here. And each one of them was talking about, I would say, like 3 areas. Basically, they talked about, and you've all mentioned the same thing. If you have that 20% deduction, you are able to reinvest more back into the business. You can grow the company faster, create more opportunities for employees. You can reinvest back in the business, and you can give back to your communities. And every business owner that's what they're saying to us now. And so, again, I think it's really, really important that we get this right. And it's going to be a big debate next year about how we do this. So it is important. And some of you are here because you were working with your associations, and we appreciate the groups that have made this a top priority going into the next year. Some of them are here today. But continue to do that. Talk about the benefits that other members of your association should be talking about, the impact, not just the benefit, but the impact of tax policy that's right or that isn't working as well. How that's going to affect you, how it's going to affect your communities, how it's going to affect Main Street. I do have some questions, and I want to get back to Eric. You had mentioned you think if, depending on the mix of 199A or the individual rates compared to corporate, so if corporate would stay at 21% and the others would snap back up to where they were, you think a lot of companies would potentially switch from S to C, which is what other folks have said as well. But what I'd like to hear, and I generally don't know the answer to this, what would be some of the downsides of doing that? Why do companies today choose to be pass-through organizations, S Corp or partnership or whatever it may be, compared to a C? Now I get even just going through the process of changing it would be a lot of administrative burden that we don't want to see. But are there other benefits to the company, and then are there other benefits to to us, to the federal government or the state government of having S or C? Walk me through a little bit of the differences there.
No, good question. So C corporations, first of all public companies generally operate as C corps. They're required to.
Right.
But when you get into family-owned, closely held businesses, by and large, they're S's, partnerships, LLCs. Biggest reason for that is economically, tax-wise, it's more advantageous. The reason is because C corps have a double taxation. So the corporation, if a corporation makes $1 million of profit, the corporation pays a tax on that. Current rate's 21%. So now you're down to $790 of available money. If they want to get that money to the owners, they need to pay a dividend. Dividends taxable at corporate or capital gains rates, basically 20%. So there's a double layer of tax before that money can go
to the shareholder or the owner of that corporation. Alternatively, if you're in pass-through space, the partnership, the LLC, the S corp does not pay income tax. That's why it's called a pass-through. All those items pass through on a Form K-1, says this how much income or loss you had for the year. That gets taxed at the individual level. There's one layer of tax. The issue that could get really interesting here is if the C corp rate, as it is permanently passed, and I realize permanent is good until it gets amended, but with that being at 21%, if the individual rates did in fact snap back because 199A goes away, the analysis may end up tipping where it makes more sense for that individual business owner to deal with a double layer of tax, particularly if they don't pay a lot of dividends. So to the extent that the business owner says, yeah, I made money, but I don't really want to take it all out as dividends. I want to keep reinvesting it. Well, then they don't really have to deal with that second layer of tax immediately. The other dynamic, when TCJA came out, that we ran so many analyses for clients because the common question at the time, 2017-18 zone, was, should I look at being a C corp? Because look, it's only 21%. And invariably, the analysis would say, especially as a PA company, you're better off being a pass-through because of that double layer of tax, and Pennsylvania's CNI rate was 9.99%, which was second highest in the state. That rate has been coming down. We're now in the sevens, slated to go down to 4.99 by 2031, I believe. The combination of Pennsylvania's rates coming down and a scenario where C corp rates would stay flat at 21, but 199A goes away, could completely change that analysis and motivate a lot of companies to go to C corp.
What about, are there additional flexibilities under an S corp that a company set aside the financial side of it? Is there a reason why companies would want to stay S as opposed to C? And anyone can jump in on that as well.
I mean, yeah, so I would say, go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead,
go ahead.
please.
He's the accountant.
Yeah.
Well, Mike is as well.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, it's a more flexible equity structure is what
Yeah.
Eric's saying.
So it would be a burden on businesses to force them to go to C if we don't get the rates somewhat.
Yeah, and there's
Is
some.
that right?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and you know, there's some disadvantages if the company was to participate in some kind of merger or acquisition. C corps create a bigger tax burden typically than the S corps, the pass-through entities. So there's some transactional benefits at some point, you know, to that structure. But I think it's really the one single taxation and the flexible equity structure.
The one piece there as well is the LLCs are so flexible. If a business owner was required to say, I need to leave LLC land and go to C corp, that has a lot less flexibility because LLCs, which are taxed as partnerships, allow you to do all sorts of creative income allocations. So you could say the Class A investors participate in the first level of earnings, and then the Class B investors divvy it up in a different fashion. That flexibility doesn't exist in a C corp. It doesn't exist in an S corp. So it would probably most impact folks that operate in LLC structure, which, by the way, private equity and a lot of private-owned businesses are LLCs. That would be the audience that probably wouldn't be thrilled about losing that flexibility if they were otherwise motivated tax-wise to go to C corp.
Okay, interesting. Any other thoughts on that by anyone?
From our standpoint, we were a C corp from 1955 until 2007. We switched to an S corp for all the reasons that
Because of tax rates?
well, when we ESOPed.
Oh, okay.
And what keeps us in S corp land is primarily that ESOP exemption on the federal tax piece. So that makes it very attractive. But that doesn't keep us from running the numbers with our accountants. Same scenario. But ESOP keeps us on that.
Right.
For now.
Yeah.
I believe also, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I think for us, flexibility wise, if we're growing, we may bring in additional minor partners. A lot easier with the LLC than with the C for some of the reasons you said for tax implications, because we have to sell stock, taxes on the stock, as opposed to bringing them in, allow them to be a part of the entity and grow with it. So there's just a number of things that give us more flexibility as we see the growth as well.
Yeah. One of the arguments that we've heard, and this is why I wanted to get this input, was don't worry about the parity. If companies don't like it, they can switch to C. And in fact, some would rather have companies switch to C for some reason or another. So you would all tend to disagree with that, I believe, is what I'm hearing. Right? You want to be able to keep the, okay, all right. Mr. Harnish,
Yes.
you talked about the impact on your business, I think 75,000 or something like that. You know, we're,
I should add that not unique. Every cooperative isn't identical. Land-O-Lakes does a good job.
Yeah.
Of what we generate, we can pass through our numbers. It's not equal for other co-ops. In general, it's a good range.
yeah. You know, we've all seen the cost of milk and food. If you lose 199A, is that going to additionally affect food prices? And can you talk a little bit about that?
A couple challenges facing the dairy industry. I think long-term on this, I mean, to pay off a farm is hopefully a generation or less, but sometimes more than that. And looking at long-term, you need families to be able to pass on the farm. You can live for a while to appreciation, but you need your balance sheet to support the next generation. I couldn't afford a farm. I couldn't be a business if I didn't pay market value for the land. We're at what, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 an acre in that township. And so when we're looking at cash flow, anytime there's the possibility, we sink that back into equity and try to keep it along. When we face the pressures of consolidation and fewer holding the means of production, that's a challenge. And that's the rural communities shouldn't be set up where you have fewer and fewer stakeholders around the land producing. So just the health of the way that we live right now and critical to keep it going. Predictability is great too. If you can get this done before November, your case effect.
Yeah, back to that predictability piece. I agree completely. We have a way of waiting last minute or even too long, you know, it's bad. But John, your business I visited your business a while ago, and like you're still continuing to grow by leaps and bounds. It's crazy. So congratulations. But you've had a lot of different challenges, I'm sure. Would an additional tax hike during that have compounded those challenges?
Yeah,
How would that have
been
been?
for us? One of our partners, he's had at one point been advised when he was first growing to switch from accrual basis to cash basis on the tax liability side, and they experienced significant growth during that period. When we merged together and formed the partnership, it's got to come due at some point. So the advantages he faced then are now coming due. So even going into next year, we're going to face a significant tax liability from prior year's profits that he had used to help them fund the growth that they have. So this is going to be tacked on top of that. And we're already trying to plan through and figure it out. And we're probably going to have to use some line of credit money to pay tax bill. And that's very uncomfortable when we'd rather be able to use the profits in cash and not have to use non-operating things to do that. So for us, it's a big deal next year because we're facing a much larger bill than we've ever experienced due to the growth that we have. It'll work itself out with the ARs and the way that we're planning for 25, but it's going to significantly impact the cash flow we have in Q1 and Q2 next year.
Yes, great. Thank you. Loshaw, best line of the day. Like you said more in that the name was stinky than any of what anybody else said. But tell us just a little bit more about your business. What do you do?
We do insulation on your piping
Sure.
and your plumbing piping, your HVAC piping, your duct, your equipment, your units on the roof, things like that. We put insulation on, and we save the planet every day because as soon as the insulation goes on, we're reducing greenhouse gas and carbon emissions immediately. Yep. So we're doing that as
Sure.
benefits the planet as well.
13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
13 years.
It's been a long 13 years.
Yeah, we were talking about that too. You work half days, right?
Yeah.
12 hours a day. Is
12
that the way it
hours.
works?
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you being here. Any other thoughts to add to our discussion?
Just when we first sat down with our accountant, she was a little old lady. We were scared of her. She was cool, and she said, "Look, I want to tell you right now, if you get this going, the government wants your money, and they're not going to wait for you to pay them. They're going to take it every week. Whether it's got to be there. You got to work hard to make that happen, and they do take a lot.
Yeah.
So we don't want them to take this 20% away from us too."
Well,
That's our famous saying. It's like having two employees on the payroll that never show up to work but always get paid.
But we talked about getting the economic growth right. The other thing we got to do is get our spending level to the right level. We're at about 26% of GDP right now, which is the highest we've been since World War II. So like anybody that says that the problem we have isn't a spending problem just doesn't know the facts. I mean, it's multiple things. Like we want to do what we can to drive additional revenue, and that comes from that stronger economic growth. You got to do that, but then we also have to look at the spending side. And the federal government just has grown and grown and grown, and so we have to ask ourselves as American citizens what we expect from our government and where we can ensure that government is focused on the core functions of government and return more money back to the people and really drive the opportunity. That's the way we do it here. So, Mr. Austin, any additional comments? You talked about the impact of 199A on many of the businesses that you work with as well.
Yeah.
So is this something you hear about? Do you think they're aware of, are people paying attention to the expiration of the tax code, or not really aware, or what are you finding?
I don't think they're as aware as they should be. They're working with their accountants a lot of times. Like Eric said, I'm on the back end of that. They've already had their conversations with their CPAs and their accountants, and they're telling us what they're hearing and the projections that they're hearing for their businesses. So I don't know how aware they are. It's definitely some conversations that I'm going to be having with clients over the next year just to make sure that they're preparing and proactively having those conversations in the event that this doesn't go through. So it's eye-opening. So this money's being invested, as the others have said, right back into their businesses, creating jobs. It's going to be very impactful.
Seeing if I have any additional questions. You brought up the other issue that I'm glad you brought up. I want to look into that and learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, 45B.
45B, yeah.
Yeah, so the tip tax was instituted back in the early 70s with regards to waitresses and bartenders, tip obligations as far as reporting. The biggest thing that I'm seeing, for me is an impact into my businesses. When Gordon Logan, who is part of our government affairs folks, he started Sport Clips in the 90s. When we really start thinking about what that looks like for me as reportable income on tips, across my platform, it's about a $7,500 to $7,800 tax liability that I have per store across 1,800 stores in the gym. For me, just in Lancaster alone, those reportable tips that go on credit cards and things of that nature, it's going to cost me about a $30,000 hit each and every year. I pay it straight away from a tax application. 45B allows those individuals to have those taxes go through, and it reduces my liability on that number, which allows me to then turn around and reinvest that money back into my staff. We just put $30,000. They're coming in next week. I just bought new chairs for all of my salons, new touch pads and things of that nature. It just makes their posture better, which allows them to feel better when they go home. But I wouldn't be able to do all this if 198 wasn't there. I'm very nervous about next year. I know we've been trying now for about the last 6 years as a PBA, trying to get 45B on something. Just recently, we're starting to get a little traction on it. I know Gordon's concerned, I know I am as well, that this could be one of our last shots to really get it out there. Because to your point just a moment ago, I don't know how many people really can truly say they understand what 199A is all about. When you start talking about it, you start getting this lump in your throat. Just listening to Eric, I already listened to my CPA, so I get that lump, and I'm sure a lot of the people as you talk to them don't realize, and when they do, wow, payroll becomes an issue. May not make it. So I feel the same way with 45B, because since I've owned my businesses for almost 2.5 years, I've increased wages 25% since I bought the business. I know right now I'm leading in that industry space, but I still need to do more for my team. And in this industry, whether it's a Sport Clips or a Great Clips, it doesn't matter. We're all in this fight for 45 together from a salon perspective.
Great. Well, I appreciate you bringing that
I
up.
appreciate you, sir.
Mr. Paulus, ESOPs, you're partially in ESOP, you said, right?
About 50%.
50% ESOP.
Been a tremendous cultural improvement
Yeah.
in my working lifetime.
Yeah.
As far as employee commitment, it's the most tangible way I can think of. We say valuing our employees and all that, but what more tangible way than we're profitable, they're profitable. And,
Yeah.
In the S corp, important to us of sharing. And it allows us to perpetuate and pass something, whether it's a family farm or a family business like ours. It's an opportunity for an owner to shave off a piece of their life's work, recognize a little, as my dad would say, ice a little cash.
It's an exit strategy, but you're doing it with your employees. Yeah. 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 I love the model. I think it's an outstanding model. In fact, another topic, we're looking for ways to make that easier. I know there's a lot of administration. So a number of bills that we're working on that I've co-sponsored that would make it easier. I just love the idea of having everyone in the business on the same team, working, having common goals, creating that kind of culture. I think team members who are part of that start to understand how business operates and start to understand free enterprise. I think it's outstanding. We ought to make it easier to do. Would losing 199A have any impact on that structure? I guess you talked already about maybe the only would be if it had become too hard to stay an S if there's not parity there. Anything else?
As I said, it's part of really one of the pillars of the tax strategy, and RE is important. The ESOP is very important. avoided a change our escort collection.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's
Yeah.
the case because of the ESOPs makes it so attractive.
And I hear you in R&D. We've heard a lot about that. We felt it was important that it should be extended in the House. We passed the bill a while ago.
Well,
But-
to echo something Mr. Wenger said too, is the stability of it.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's hard, and I know you
Yeah.
both already know that, but it's very.
No, having
very hard
predictability
to keep up with
having
what
predictability is
change.
key. I mean, if you don't know what it's going to look like 2 years from now or a year from now, it's much harder to decide how to invest and to implement additional capital. And so I get that completely. So we had hoped we could extend some of the few provisions that had expired at least into the end of 2025, and then we're going to do all that together. But I don't think it's going to pass in the Senate. They were talking about a bill. They were talking about. Did they bring it up last week? Or this week? They brought it up today. Failed today. Okay, I was going to say I think it was going to fail, but which is a shame. But anyway, and Mike, any other?
Well,
Comments, questions?
because Eric and I talked a little bit before when I first came, and being in the automobile business, I've watched the erosion of our ability to participate in our own markets. We have given up market share through tax policy and regulations that we're willing to shift to another part of the world and saying, you know what, we can't compete anymore. We can't compete anymore, not because we don't have the desire to compete. We've taken ourselves out of a market. When you look at the game films and say, so why did we lose in that market? You say, well, it's pretty simple. This is what you did to the people that do that. And so now we've lost that market share. It's gone overseas. We're fools if we think we're going to get it back, because once somebody takes a market from you, they don't give it back. I don't know why it happened, but I do know that for me, and I can speak very specifically about this, when I graduated in 1970 and came back to the dealership, 1 out of 3 new trucks sold in America was a Chevrolet truck. We controlled 33% of weight class. That did not include GMC trucks, which is the same truck with a different hood ornament and a different horn ring. We controlled 25% Chevrolet in the passenger car market. That did not include Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Cadillac. Chevrolet alone was 25% of the market. General Motors today struggles to be at 17 or 18% all in for a market. And if you drive around, it used to be fun when my parents would take us for rides. We used to have contests of counting Chevrolet, the bow tie, and the blue oval. Because for us, it was, when I ride the school bus, we actually rode up with the Ford dealers' kids, and it was, they would say Chevy stink, we said no, Ford stink. But when I look at what's happening today, we have given away so much market share. We've also given away the ability, if it comes to production of products that we're going to need to defend ourselves. World War II, we were protected with two oceans. We were able to eliminate the production of our enemies. We went untouched. And it's just amazing to me. We always talk, people who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. I think we're at a point right now that if we don't wake up, because the people who look at us and they eye us and they think, we don't have to even go there, they're going to do themselves in. So many things that we've watched. Imagine we're talking today about tax policy that allows you to operate profitably. And what do we get tax revenue from? Profits. Look at all in what you do. I would love to see your total economic footprint when you take your total taxes that you pay in the community you live, in the state that you live, and in the total of the entirety of the country. And then also take into effect, whether you're profitable or not, you still pay wage taxes, you pay real estate taxes, you contribute to pensions, and I think there has been such a disconnect in this country. We don't really know how things work. We go at it an entirely different thing. Everything we've talked about today is what keeps you from being profitable. What makes it harder for you to reinvest? What did TCJA do to turn it around and say, no, I can do it now, and I will do it now? But it's really going to take, I got to tell you, and everybody in this room, If you think it's about ways and means and policy, you're right. But you better take a look at the other policy that's taking place. And I am just shocked anymore. I'm sorry to get like this, but honest to God, I am so thankful that the people who raised me did the great job that they did. I used to say I was the luckiest guy in the world. That is not true. I am the most blessed guy in the world. Our generation is the most blessed generation. It had nothing to do with luck. It had to do with that generation of people, the greatest generation who saved the world. I can't understand what in the heck happened. Everything that they sacrificed and what we're willing to jettison and say, well, this is just the way it goes. Well, you know what? That's just the way it goes. That's if you accept that that's just the way it goes. I don't believe that. And I say this all the time, and I mean this sincerely, and I hate to be like this, but honest to God, you better hate losing. I get so fed up when people tell me, I love to win, I love to win, I love to win. I say, okay, fine. What will you do to keep from losing? That's more important about loving to win. That's all bullshit. You better hate losing. You better hate losing with every core of your body, not give up market share and not give up opportunity and not walk away from the sacrifices that were made before by other generations and sit back and say, well, I can't do anything about it. That is the lamest excuse anybody could come up with. Get out of bed, get focused, get to work, and get the damn job done. And look at it. We owe a tremendous debt to those who came before us. 1.5 million men and women in uniform died to give us this ability to get together today and talk about tax policy. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? They paid the greatest price for us to be dating. We debate things that don't even make sense. Why would you even bring that up? Why would you think that somehow the answer is to tax you at a higher rate, to regulate you at a higher rate, and then blame you for losing market share? Hell, Lloyd just talked about $34 trillion in the red. That's not really where we are.
35 now.
It's about 125 trillion in the red right now when you look at about the other things that are promised in the future. And they are coming due at some point. So if I've offended you in any way, I don't mean to. But I cannot sit back. No, I know what he went through. I know what you were all going through. And what I don't understand is we should never sit back and let it happen. This is our challenge. This is our challenge. I will not walk away from the sacrifices that people made for me. So God bless you for doing what you're doing. But you know what, please, don't be nice. Don't be nice that we're doing the wrong thing, saying you're doing the wrong thing. The only thing is, I got to tell you, we need more of him. We need more of him, and we need more of you.
Well, you can see why I'm glad that Congressman Kelly is with us today. We had originally, by the way, planned there would have been more members of the tax team. We scheduled it to be at the end of a session week so that folks could drive here from D.C. and then fly back to the districts from here. And that session was canceled, so everybody was scattered across the country. But we had a great time anyway with Congressman Kelly here. I appreciate him being here. And we've recorded this. This will get throughout. It'll Ways and Means members will hear about this. This will get talked about. So this was really important to have this kind of discussion. So we're well over time. Would love to keep talking with you, but I'll say this: stay in touch. If you have any other ideas, thoughts, please let me know. And if we can ever be helpful in any way to any of you, of course, we're always there for you. We have offices. I have an office in, a lot of my staff is here, but we have an office in Hanover, one in Red Line, and one in Lancaster, Georgetown Road. So we're there for you if we can ever be helpful. So with that, we'll conclude this. And I again thank each of you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.